Trade reports are really starting to pick up surrounding the Milwaukee Bucks, and ahead of what's going to be a very exciting season for this team, a brand new report has dropped surrounding one player in particular that has fans not only fired up, but very intrigued, and it involves a trade. We're going to break that down as well as discuss some interesting takeaways from their preseason game yesterday as one player stood above the rest. A ton to go over on this episode, but before we get into it all, quick reminder, hit that subscribe button. If you're a part of the 70 or so percent who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Bucks content. Jack, a lot to go over today, and obviously the regular season is inching closer and closer. They had a preseason game yesterday, their first loss of the preseason. We're going to be taking a step back today and touching on a new report that has dropped surrounding a player that I've touched on this channel in the past and has been a name that's been thrown around a lot. And it's not necessarily someone you'll expect. And let's dive right into it here, and it is Jerami Grant. And the article here summarizes it fairly well. It says the mock Jerami Grant trade could dig Bucks into a deeper hole. And bear with it here because you can see this here, and it is Jerami Grant and 2 second-round picks for Kyle Kuzma and Andre Jackson Jr. Now, we know reports have been kind of flying around the Bucks, always looking to upgrade their team. When you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, it's always going to be a thing here. But the explanation is that the Bucks, as always, will be active in trying to upgrade their roster, and that trade rumors will heat up, and that they've been interested in Jerami Grant in the past, and this could be a time to make a move for him. Jack, I want to get your thoughts on this. I'm not super high on Jerami Grant. He's coming off of a really, really bad year, and you're giving up Kyle Kuzma, who hasn't been great either the past couple years. But in this, you're also trading Andre Jackson Jr., who I don't know, it's a bit unclear what his role will be heading into next season, but you do get a couple second-round picks back. If you're doing this deal, you would be preying on Jerami Grant turning into the player he was a couple years ago. However, in my eyes, he's aging, he's declining. What are your thoughts on this deal? Of course, again, they're giving up Kyle Kuzma. I'm not a huge fan of it, but there is upside in Jerami Grant, a good three-point shooter, a good defender when he was a little bit younger. But again, this is a trade they do if they don't think the Kyle Kuzma experiment is going to work with Giannis.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points, Nick. He obviously costs a lot of money, which is a factor to look at, of course. And yeah, of course, he said that he's a great rim protector. He's an all-right defender. He's a good shooter. Of course, he didn't have his best season last year, efficiency-wise, shooting 37% from the field, which is pretty abysmal, if you ask me. He shot a little better from the field, from the three-point range than Kyle Kuzma did. But I think something that Jerami Grant has over Kyle Kuzma is his physicality. I think he's a really physical player. I think he's got a little more bounce in his game than Kuzma does. And I think he'd play a little better off the ball alongside someone like Giannis. I don't think Kyle Kuzma is very good off ball. I think he needs to have the ball in his hands to kind of really create on the offense and put points on the board. But I think Jerami Grant could fit a little better in that offensive scheme.
Yeah, you look at his stats, and you mentioned it. Last year, he played 47 games, 37% from the field, 36.5% from three. He is a better three-point shooter than Kuzma marginally, considering last year. But if you look at the previous 2 years, and I said he's aging, he's entering his age 31 season. He kind of relied on athleticism a good bit there. But the previous 2 years, 20 points a game, 21 points a game, shooting 40% from three. If they can get that version of Jerami Grant, then obviously it makes a ton of sense. And Kuzma, he is a very decent on-ball scorer. He's trying to figure out, of course, the off-ball role, being a spot-up shooter to a degree. I think he has the capability of doing that, and he was acquired at the deadline last year, so I do think the Bucks will give him a long look. But the article goes on to say that Jerami Grant isn't a perfect upgrade for the Bucks. Is Grant a better player than Kuzma? The numbers are comparable. Grant, 14, 3.5, and 2.1, and then Kuzma basically 15, 6, and 2. So Kuzma's a better rebounder. Grant's a much better defender. They're both pretty similar from three. I think, again, some people like Kuzma defensively a little bit. I think what Jerami Grant brings, being able to protect the rim a little bit better, like you mentioned, being more physical, doesn't necessarily translate to rebounding, but it might translate to what this team needs a little bit more. And you mentioned the most important takeaway here, which is the money. So Kuzma is set to take home $22 million and then $20.3 million the following year. Grant's at 32 and 34.2. So you'd, of course, probably have to add some other things to make this trade work logistically, but we're just going to be focusing on the article for now. This is where the trade falls apart for me a little bit. Like if it was a one-for-one, maybe it makes some sense. You hope that that Jerami Grant can kind of figure it out and really be good alongside Giannis. I think they'd rather take Kuzma for $10 million less, hope that he can figure it out off ball. He's a better rebounder, and this is a team that struggled with rebounds at times last season. And it's something we haven't mentioned either is health. You can see here, he hasn't played over 55 games in a regular season in a couple of years. And 3 or 4 of his last 5 years have been less than 60 games. It is there's too many things I think that scare me away from this deal, but it is an interesting, point about Jerami Grant in general. But at the same time, he does have upside, I think, that Kyle Kuzma. I mean, you could argue Kyle Kuzma has it. He had it with the, with the Wizards, but All things being equal, maybe you make the deal, but I think some of the injury concerns as well is something that I don't think the Bucks want to relive that with some of the injuries they've had with Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Dame Lillard before they all departed.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something to look at. You don't want to be paying a guy $31 million a year and he's only going to play just over half the season. That's obviously something that comes into play when you're trading for players like that. Another thing that I kind of look at in this trade is the departure of Andre Jackson Jr. in that trade. I personally really like him as a player. I think he brings a lot of grit and big perimeter defense to that team. I think he's a big hustle guy, and that's someone you want on every team. So I think that's really important to keep in mind if you're trading someone like that away. But in the sense of keeping Kyle Kuzma and paying him $10 million less, which is a big factor, you hope that he can figure it out off ball. You hope he can figure it out on the defensive side of the ball, and you hope that his play can translate to wins because it didn't really look like that when he first came here to Milwaukee, especially in the playoffs. We all know how that went. But yeah, of course, you want to keep someone like that on the team and see if Doc Rivers can kind of help him figure his game out and play around players like Giannis and Miles Turner.
Yeah, Doc's getting a lot of credit so far about new offensive schemes that he has. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And you look at the deal from the perspective of it's basically Jeremy Grant for Kyle Kuzma and then Jackson for 2 seconds. So do you think that Jackson is worth 2 second round picks? Let us know down below. I think they'd probably rather keep the upside of not Kyle Kuzma, of Andre Jackson Jr. A couple other things before we wrap up here. But again, let us know down below. Would you do this deal? Jack, they did play yesterday, and it was a pretty interesting game here. And you're going to notice a couple players that stood above the rest. And I said in the intro, there was one player that stood above the rest. We did see Giannis. Not going to be touching too much on him. He did what Giannis does. He did really, efficient scoring, struggle from the free throw line. We know what Giannis does. Incredible player, insane player. Taking it a little bit easy because it was preseason. We got a glimpse of what the starting lineup will probably look like, depending on how things shape up here. But Cole Anthony and Ryan Rollins, two of the the backup guards here for this team, and literally their two backup point guards, they both played very well. And not to say that Kevin Porter didn't, but Cole Anthony 7 for 11 with 21 points, Ryan Rollins 13 points and got 17 minutes. There's going to be a world here where these guys are battling for not necessarily a starting spot, because we know Kevin Porter Jr. was named the starting point guard of this team following his extension this offseason. It's going to be Cole Anthony and Ryan Rollins. They'll probably try to figure out some schemes where Ryan Rollins is running the 2 a little bit, depending on how things are shaping up on every single game. Kyle Kuzma off the bench went 2 for 10, kind of to factor into some of the stuff we're talking about today. Any thoughts on Cole Anthony and Ryan Rollins? Again, they're going to do what they're going to do. Neither of them are necessarily going to, woe you away every single game with 20 points a game. They both have some, facilitating abilities. Doc Rivers has praised Cole Anthony for his passing abilities thus far in the offseason. And he wasn't, dishing necessarily super well, but 21 points for Cole Anthony. Good sign, and this is what Anthony did in his prime, or early on in his career. It's not his prime, he hasn't reached it yet. Earlier on in his career for the Orlando Magic.
Yeah, I really like Cole Anthony. I think he's a really good playmaker. I think he's a good athletic guard that you can put at the one to facilitate the ball and make plays. I also do like Kevin Porter Jr. I think he's also a really good point guard. He's good at getting the right players the ball at the right time. He's a good pick and roll player. So I really thought that it was a 50-50 kind of thing going into the season with Kevin Porter and Cole Anthony playing. But Kevin Porter did end up winning the role, which I'm fine with at this point right now. I think throughout the season, maybe they'll kind of change positions. They'll see who starts and who doesn't. But I'm fine with Kevin Porter starting for now.
Yeah, let us know down below what your thoughts are on that. A lot of internal competition here. Jericho Sims did what he does and not put up much points, but filled the box score otherwise. Would you do this deal for Jeremy Grant, Kyle Kuzma? It's a little bit wild. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. See you guys later.